It's the most event head-to-head scheduling I've seen since Jim Crockett Promotions. Or so said one Tony Khan, in reference to the observation that some have had when it comes to the possibility that WWE right now might be counter-programming against that of All Elite Wrestling. But what is counter-programming, and is that actually what's going on? And furthermore, is this something that us fans really should be concerned about at all? Well, one thing's for certain is that us fans should know that it's the topic of this episode, because today... Alright, so in case you aren't aware, there are a lot of big WWE shows scheduled to go around or at the same time as AEW shows. And is this what many fans would refer to as counter-programming? Well, to talk about that, let's go ahead and just define what counter-programming is to begin with. Counter-programming, the act of a wrestling promotion deliberately booking an event at the same time as another promotion's event in order to detract from their viewership or attendance. Now, the most classic example of this is when WWE was trying out a newfangled pay-per-view known as the Survivor Series, as they had it scheduled to go directly against Jim Crockett Promotions' Starrcade, with Vince McMahon threatening to not let pay-per-view providers have the following year's WrestleMania if they also made that year's Starrcade available as well. And of course, this strategy worked, with Starrcade eventually moving to December and Survivor Series still being a mainstay even today. And going forward, yet another brilliant example of counter-programming would be the Monday Night Wars, where Eric Bischoff created the show of WCW Monday Nitro with the intent of taking WCW from the number 2 position to being the top wrestling promotion in the United States. Which of course he was successful in doing, at least for 83 weeks. Then, after the collapse of WCW, we would see a return for a battle for supremacy on Monday nights, but this time it was WWE going against total non-stop action wrestling. This time we would see Hulk Hogan and Eric Bischoff leading the charge yet again against WWE, only to be met on this initial outing by a returning Bret Hart, who finally made his long-awaited comeback on WWE Raw. Then, years later, and we would see World Wrestling Entertainment's developmental territory of NXT invaded by the brand new All Elite Wrestling. Sure, NXT might have changed networks, but the Wednesday time slot was always theirs. That is, until AEW Dynamite ran them off onto Tuesdays. This brings us to the present, with AEW and NXT squaring off again. However, this time it would be NXT's pay-per-view of Battleground going against AEW's Double or Nothing on May 25th, 2025. And that's not all, as WWE would continue this year by scheduling their European tour, this time with a heavy focus on the United Kingdom to coincide at the same time as AEW's Forbidden Door, which would be taking place in London. And then later this year on July 12, 2025, we get to see All Elite's All In, hailing from Texas, competing against WWE's Saturday night's main event, which will be taking place in Atlanta, Georgia. But now that we've established what counter-programming is, it's important to note that it's done intentionally in order to sabotage rival promotions. And in this particular case, can we be sure that that is exactly what's happening? Going back to 2019 and WrestleMania 35, which took place in the greater New York City area. On the same weekend, we had WWE putting on NXT WrestleMania, as well as Ring of Honor and New Japan putting on their joint venture in Madison Square Garden. Not to mention numerous other independent promotions that all followed this same strategy. For example, the company that I worked for, Catalyst Wrestling, back in 2019, put on a show on the exact same day as WrestleMania, just a few hours before. And they also did it just a few minutes away from where WrestleMania was taking place. And you know what? This benefited greatly as we had a great turnout for the event. And that's not the only example either, because back when the original All In show took place, Catalyst Wrestling also put on a show on the exact same day, at the exact same time. And you know what? We sold out. The point of the matter is that counter-programming has to be done in order to try and sabotage the competition. And while these companies aren't exactly working with each other, they're not exactly working against each other either. And if everybody benefits by selling out shows and making lots of money, I really don't see that as a counter-programming problem. Eric Bischoff recently said on his 83 Weeks podcast that in terms of WWE possibly counter-programming against AEW, that it was good for business. Competition creates better product. And also that Tony likes to talk about being the challenger brand, now's the time to be a challenger brand. Furthermore, when discussing whether or not WWE was intentionally doing this, specifically talking about the coincidence of All In and Saturday Night's main event, he said that's a stretch. It's not like NBC can just arbitrarily, because they hear AEW's doing something, and Nick Khan or Ariel Manuel calls their contacts over at NBC and says, hey, I don't care what you had programmed before, let's do a Saturday Night's main event. That's not how television works, especially at the network level. And so sure, in this case, this might just be a major coincidence. But even if it was intentional, what would be the point? As Easy put it, and as I just stated previously, in a lot of ways this is fundamentally good for the wrestling industry. It's good for all parties involved, but in other ways it could also be seen as damaging. However, if that was the case, and that's if, what would ultimately be the point? WWE is by far and away the industry leader. It's not even close. The amount of money they generate, the amount of audience they have, they are already dominating AEW by a long shot. And let's remember, back during the Monday Night Wars, it's not that WWE decided to attack WCW when they were the number 2 promotion. It was actually the other way around, when WCW brought the competition to WWE's door. Shout out to the power of the Patreons such as Dakari Garmin, who can counter every wrestling holds counter move with another counter. Mr. J, who can successfully counter program against water for a goldfish. Ron, the kitchen counter Hawthorne. What? He likes cooking. It makes sense. Major Trey, who wants you to get with the program and realize that no one says get with the program anymore. And Harry Flynn, who says if you're gonna counter program, you should also count his program too. And also a big thank you to the rest of my amazing Patreons who all help to keep this channel going. Thank you so much. But at the same time, while other companies all know booking around WWE is beneficial, WWE also knows that too. And so, yet again, going back 6 years, while everybody benefited from a full weekend of professional wrestling, WWE, I guess, could have benefited more. As now they have 2 nights of WrestleMania, 2 nights of SummerSlam, and they still have NXT. And so with that, is WWE now setting up more shows to give more people more opportunities to profit? Or are they trying to box everybody out, therefore guaranteeing that the only company to profit off of WWE is WWE? In terms of the corporate mindset, if you're wondering if perhaps Endeavor is trying to take out the competition by putting them out of business, well, yes, Endeavor is way more corporately minded than even Vince McMahon was, but as we just established, competition can be good. And therefore, is removing a competitor necessarily what's best for your pocket? And furthermore, let's also remember that Tony Khan has an infinite bankroll. Making them non-profitable really isn't all that big of a deal, let alone just trying to take a few seats or a few eyeballs off their product, if that is indeed what WWE is trying to do. Not saying that they are. Now, what's going on behind the scenes of WWE? Well, unless you work there, I don't think you have any way of knowing. However, I'm also sure that a lot of fans are going to speculate anyway, even if they'll never really know the answers. But in either case, let's just remember that booking shows in and around each other can be beneficial, according to a lot of experts such as Eric Bischoff and a lot of independent wrestling promoters. But at the same time, starving out your competition by having ticket prices so high that fans can really only afford to go to one show is not exactly the best for business as a whole. So what's actually going on? Well, that's anybody's guess. But as a wrestling fan, all we can do is sit back and just go along with the ride. Anyway, that's my thoughts on this recent AEW WWE counter-programming debacle. What do you think? Let me know down in the comments. Give this video a like and make sure that you're watching all the videos here on Dave Knows Wrestling, as the views really do help a lot. Thank you for watching, and thank you to all the great Patreon supporters out there. You keep this channel going. And as always, Dave knows.